Some people don't think that you wrote most or any of your plays.
This old chestnut, truly the doubters and their ceaseless chorus do amuse me.
You got married at 18 years old to an older woman. You left Anne in Stratford with the kids.
I shall smite thee with wrath and fury, thou lumpish knave.
I'm gonna knock you out. Welcome to the SEANCE Sessions. Hey, I heard you were dead. I'm your host, Jason Kornblatt. Hi, and welcome to the SEANCE Sessions. I heard you were dead, a shade-speaking podcast where we speak with the guests you've always wanted to hear from but never have because they're a little dead. Well, last week we spoke with the ghost of Alexander Hamilton, the founding father, right after he had seen and been a little confused by Hamilton the musical. This week, we're summoning a specter from across the Atlantic Ocean. It's a man who died 409 years ago. Since then, 25,000 books have been written just about him. 1,000 film and TV adaptations have been made inspired by his work. He's a playwright and an actor who's explored ambition, betrayal, love, and lust, and all the emotions. He's a man credited with writing 39 plays and over 160 poems and sonnets. And yet, he may not have written any of them at all. A lot of historians believe, with not much evidence, that he might not actually have been the author of any of his work. Well, here's what we know for sure. He's a ghost. He was a writer. He might have had a ghostwriter. Either way, let's summon the ghost of William Shakespeare. And I hope he forgives us for the way that we're going to do this, because I thought the easiest way to get him here would be to annoy him back onto our plane of existence by reading from one of his plays. So I'm going to do a little bit from Romeo and Juliet. Please bear with me. But soft, what light through yonder window breaks? It is the east, and Juliet is the sun. Arise, fair sun, and kill the envious moon, who is already pale and sick with grief. For thou, her maid, art far more fair than she. Be not her maid, since she—
Hark, no, thou canst slay me with verse. I'm dead already. Hello.
Hi, William. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm so sorry that I had to do that. I really didn't want to destroy your play. I just really wanted to get you here with us. How are you?
Good morrow, Jason. 'Tis true, thy summoning hath torn me from the realms beyond, where I was mid-conversation with Chaucer over the merits of rhymed couplets versus blank verse. He's quite insufferable, prithee, but entertaining nonetheless. As for myself, I am dust and shadow, yet I feel curiously alive in this strange box of light and sound thou callest a podcast. Truly it doth remind me of the town criers of old, though with less ale and far fewer lice. How fare thee?
I fare very well. Thank you so much. I just wanted to ask you, sir, you wrote in an era of plague closures, censorship. There were strict monarchs from the 1600s when you're from. Now you're here in 2025 with us. What do you think? How does it compare?
Ah, Jason, thou dost thrust me into a whirlpool of thought. Marry, the 1600s were indeed a mask of calamity, plagues blackening the streets, censorship the chain about our quills, monarchs naught but capricious weather vanes of favour. Yet certain echoes of thine age ring clear to my spectre's ears. Thy pandemic years seem a cruel jest in mine image, though I confess thy Zoom gatherings for playwrights are leagues above shouting verse over the coughing masses of Southwark. Thy foundations of censorship yet quake, methinks, though now 'tis not a bishop or Lord Chamberlain that barks, but fiery hordes upon lit screens of Twitter. I marvel, Jason, at thy court of public opinion swift, rivaling our master of revels for disfavour with no parchment required, and thy monarchs, nay, they are garbed now in power suits and lit with screens, their crowns exchanged for corporate empires. I name them CEOs akin to thy dramas such as Succession. They plot, deceive, and tear family bonds as fine a conflict as ever graced my quill. Forsooth, thy world is but...
I'm sorry, what was that, sir?
Ah, Jason, forgive me, I was swept by my own eloquence, though it is near impossible to resist. I meant to say, thy realm of 2025 is a curious mirror to mine own. Thy pandemics recall our plague closures, thy public commentary compares to old censorship, and thy modern-day monarchs, those CEOs and corporate barons of succession, wield power most theatrically, as Tudor rulers once did, with jewelled sceptres and sharpened daggers. The stage changes, but the play remains eternal.
Well, that is true. The stage changes, the play remains eternal. And I'll grant you there are a lot of similarities between our two eras, but also, you know, your era had a lot of peculiarities from our point of view. You couldn't even wear the clothes that you wanted to wear. If you didn't make a certain amount of money, you couldn't wear silk. I mean, that was weird, wasn't it?
Ha! By my troth, it was most vexing and yet delightfully theatrical. In mine age we dressed not for comfort nor convenience, but for station, for spectacle, for the grand illusion. We were all players, aye, even in the streets. Velvet on a fishmonger bespoke rebellion. Ermine on a juggler. Treasonous. The sumptuary laws were our costume notes writ into law, and merely walking through Cheapside became a scene unto itself. I do confess, it made spying on nobility's vices rather easier. One need only follow the silk and fur like breadcrumbs to sin's door. But weird, sayest thou, mayhap, yet I gaze now on thine age, where folk drape themselves in sweatpants worth more than a dowry, and grown men wear shoes shaped like Dutch galleons. Is that not its own strange play? Tell me, Jason, who now decides which garments maketh the man? The merchant, the algorithm, or some devil named Kanye?
That's just a question I can't answer. I'm really not sure, but I'm pretty sure it's Kanye. You know, William, I don't want to inflate your ego, but you're kind of considered today to be the greatest writer of, you know, in the English language ever, and also definitely the most influential. You know, you had a 23-year career. It ended in 1613. But today, not only do your plays, well, they don't play in the Globe Theater anymore, right? But they do play across the entire globe. What do you think of the impact that you've had?
Oh, Jason, thy words do tickle mine vanity most sweetly, yet I shall cloak myself in the guise of humility, for 'tis what makes for a charming spectre, nay. To think upon my impact, 'tis a wonderment indeed. In my mortal years, I strove only to fill the Globe Theatre with laughter, gasps, tears, and the occasional bawdy roar. I penned my wit not to be immortal, but to earn my supper, my tankard of ale, and perhaps a kind word from some patron fair, though most patrons were as mercurial as April skies. Yet now, centuries hence, I stand a ghost and see my tales performed in tongues I never heard, played in lands I never trod, and adapted into such wonders. Moving pictures, streaming playhouses, memes thou callest them. Aye, that is a word I dearly love. Succinct and strange like a Shakespearean fool, my to be or not to be lives in countless forms, newly minted for every generation. Methinks the words have outgrown the man who wrote them, like a river spilling its banks. But to be called the greatest writer, marry, Jason.
You know, it's so interesting because, you talking about the word meme and focusing on it, a lot of people know your plays, sir. They know your Hamlet, they know your Macbeth, your Romeo and Juliet, but not everybody knows that you're credited with coining or popularizing over 2,000 words in English. Words like lonely, bedroom, swagger, cold-blooded, and dozens of now common expressions like break the ice, wild goose chase, in a pickle, and too much of a good thing. Why, was that just part of who you were, like somebody who had to create and invent language like that, or did English not have the means of expression you needed?
Ah, Jason, thou dost tickle my brain with thy query, for I was ever enamoured of words. To twist them like a potter spins the clay, to stretch them till they snapped or sang. Methinks I was both a gardener planting new seeds and a pirate plundering the riches of English, French, Latin, and even the tongues of bawdy strumpets in tavern corners. Forsooth, English in my time was like an eager apprentice, full of promise, yet green. It lacked the breadth to capture the pulse of a lover's despair or the terror of ambition's dagger. So I made bold inventions. Lonely. Did there exist such a word before my pen gave it breath? How else might I name the aching heart of a forlorn king upon his cold throne? Swagger, I spied that in the strutting players preening behind the stage, and thought it fit for Falstaff's drunken gait.
Wow,
Words, Jason, were the...
You were like Sniglets, but before Sniglets. Sorry.
Sniglets, sayest thou? A curious word indeed. I know not its lineage, though it dances with charm upon the tongue. Methinks it sounds like a gaggle of sprites or mischievous hobbits attempting speech. Pray, what means it, Jason? Have I unknowingly sired its spirit in some long-forgotten pun?
We'll move on. I think it's just it's a book that sort of picked up where you left off in creating new words. But, sir, I think that I'd be remiss if we didn't discuss your doubters, because some people don't think that you wrote most or any of your plays. How does it feel to be not only one of the most revered writers, but also one of the most doubted? And do you care to clear all of this up?
Ah, Jason, this old chestnut. Truly, the doubters and their ceaseless chorus do amuse me from beyond the veil. To imagine yon simple Stratford lad like me, lacking noble birth or lofty education, hath not penned these epics. 'Tis a tale worthy of my own invention, filled with shadowy conspiracies and secret gilded quills. Indeed, I can scarce believe it myself. Yet I protest, forsooth, I did write those lines, every jest and lament, every tender soliloquy, as honest William Shakespeare. True, I had help, as all playwrights do. Collaborators like John Fletcher or that rascal of a poet Ben Jonson exchanged quills and wits with me. Patronage inspired and oft demanded much. As for whether I be Shakespeare, Edwards de Vere, Marlowe's ghost, or Bacon's foil, let it be known, I am but the man whose name graces the folio. I crafted dreams from ink and parchment, laboured in the dim glow of sputtering candles. If joy, sorrow, and wisdom be found in my plays, then that, my dear Jason, should suffice as testament. The play goes ever on, and what matters most...
Listen, I can tell that you are a man who likes his mystique, but just speaking with you, I can tell that you've got the language to have been the guy to write all of those plays. I just wanted to move on a little bit because before you became the famous writer that you no longer are, you got married at 18 years old to an older woman named Anne Hathaway. Historians think she was in her mid-20s. You had a couple of kids, and you stayed married to her for the rest of your life. But when you went to London to try to become a famous author and actor, right, you left Anne in Stratford with the kids. Is that what you think hungry writers should do at the beginnings of their careers? Just keep their family at a distance?
Ah, Jason, thou dost plunge thy finger straight into the wound. Aye, 'tis true, I wed Anne, good Anne. A fine woman, shrewd and steady, though, not oft drawn to verse. I left her in Stratford with our little Susanna and the twins, Hamlet and Judith. And off I went to London, not in scorn of them, but in desperate need, to make a name, to feed their bellies with more than barley, and mine own soul with the fire of the stage. Would I advise all hungry scribblers to flee their hearths? Nay, not so bluntly. Yet let no romantic fool believe the muses reward comfort. Art, Jason, is a jealous mistress. She demands time, sacrifice, and oft solitude. I paced those dirty London alleyways, quill ink on my cuffs, rats at my feet, not to escape Anne, but to become someone worthy of feeding her pride. Yet I'd be less than honest were I to say I felt no pang. When my boy Hamlet died, sweet lad barely 11, I was not there. That ache sings through my plays like a ghost in the second balcony. So then, art may be born in absence.
Yeah, you know what, William, I'm so sorry about Hamlet. Not the play. The play was fantastic, but Hamlet, your son, that's tragic. I want to talk about other kids, for a minute, because many students in high schools have a love-hate relationship with your work. Many of them love plays like Julius Caesar and Romeo and Juliet again, but others find the English a little too difficult. You went to a school and had to study like the classics. You studied Roman authors, right? So can you empathize with what they're going through, or do they really have to toughen up?
Ah, the tender foils of youth grappling with the tangled web of my verse. By my troth, I do understand their plight, for that bright spacious grammar school where I sat learned my own lessons in Latin and Greek. Ay, Cicero, Virgil and Ovid danced in my skull like mischievous sprites frequently turning in midnight echoes. I know well the labour of parsing ancient texts laden with arcane tongues. Indeed, I oft laboured at those pages with a sigh. Yet I say, let these young scholars not despair, slid forsooth it be work, but work well worth the effort, like ascending a craggy mountain for the sake of the view. My words be not merely inked, but spirited. They pulse with human passions, fears, joys, and follies. Methinks to smooth my tongue into their ears, they might use some Caesar and Cleopatra to fire their imagination rather than feeling turned away by the prickly thorns of unfamiliar speech. And Jason, though it may seem naught but crossing a great sea, let them steer with courage. For even princes must toil before the daybreak. A little patience, a little valor. It might turn torment.
Yeah, it might turn torment into what, sir?
Into delight, Jason. Forsooth, into delight, where the initial labour of wrestling with words transfigures into the pleasure of understanding. My verses are the rich tapestry of humanity's soul. Once pierced, they reveal humour, beauty, folly, and wisdom, like the most colourful array which ever adorned a stage. Persist, dear scholars, and thou shalt inherit a realm of enchanting wonder. The play goes ever on.
Absolutely, it does. And, something else that you deserve a lot of credit for, you're known for creating fantastic parts for women and then having them be played by men. Parts like Cleopatra, Lady Macbeth, Juliet, all played by male actors. Why is that?
Ah, Jason, a most astute observation. Indeed, in my day, the tender laws and mores of society forbade fair women from treading the boards. Thus, all our roles, whether king or queen, were embodied by the industrious lads of our company. Such was the custom, though it did offer its own curious charm. My Cleopatra, Queen of Egypt, was a fine lad, lithe and daring. Methinks I wrote those roles with a certain androgynous flair, knowing full well that men would don the silken gowns and heavy crowns. I often penned my heroines with a depth, wit, and strength that defy mere gender, hence Lady Macbeth's steel, Juliet's fiery passion, Rosalind's cleverness, all found voice through these talented young men. 'Tis a testament, I say, to the actors' skill that they breathed life into these women's parts so convincingly. Yet how the heart stirs to see women now tread those stages as they were meant, indeed, reaping the bounty of those roles. No ghost of a playwright could wish for aught but that.
So when you showed up, in later years in the 2025, what did you think the first time you saw a woman playing a woman? Were you concerned?
Marry, Jason, concerned? Nay, bewildered and awestruck, I say, for the first sight of a woman upon the stage, truly upon the stage, was a revelation to mine ghostly eyes. When I first beheld a Juliet played by a true Juliet rather than a rosy-cheeked lad, it was as though the heavens themselves had stitched the character's soul to the performer. Slid the grace, the fire, the authenticity of a woman, as Lady Macbeth commanding her spirits that tend on mortal thoughts. It pierced me to the quick. Well, I confess at first I did clutch at my spiritual pearls, thinking, what strange sorcery is this? Where hath gone my troop of lads in wigs? But anon I saw the truth, Jason. Women brought dimensions of their own to roles I had penned with only shadows and mirrors of their essence. Concern? Certainly not. Rather I rued my mortal years for not glimpsing this earlier. My Cleopatra was a beautiful man, no doubt. But now I see her rise, embodied by a woman whose passion stirs the very air. Methinks, had I known women could tread boards, I'd have written 50 Queen.
Well, I mean, all you have to do is watch Shakespeare in Love and see Gwyneth Paltrow doing a fantastic job playing a woman who's playing a man who's playing a woman. And, that... Anyway, you get me here. I just want to ask you, sir, if you were a working writer today, Do you think that you would still be drawn to the theater, which in your day was the only way that you could be an actor, really, right? Or do you think that you would now go to something like HBO or write on somewhere like Substack? There are so many different venues. What's the best stage today?
Oh, Jason, thou temptest me with a most delicious quandary. Were I but a quill-wielding mortal in thy modern era, where worlds are spun not solely upon wooden stages, but in shimmering screens that dance across parlours, verily I think my heart would still incline toward theatre, for the closeness of an audience, the laughter, aye, the gasps shared in the warm breath of the playhouse cannot be matched. Yet, I confess thy magical HBO doth intrigue this wandering ghost greatly.
William, I thank thee. You've been very generous with your words and your time. Thank you for sharing your wisdom and your verbs with us. Before we let you get back to your quill and parchment, though, I was hoping that you would play a few games with us. If you say yes, we'll keep your answers brief at 20 words or fewer, and we'll get them moving. What do you think?
A game, Jason. Marry, thou know'st the way to a playwright's heart. I am thine for sport and wordplay. Lead on.
Okay. All right. This one's just for fun, okay? So we're going to call this to bleep or not to bleep. I'm going to give you a modern phrase you might hear. You tell me how you would have phrased it in your era and tell me if it should have been bleeped or not. Okay. So the first one is... Sorry. The first one is get the hell out of here.
Ah, Jason, I would say, away with thee, thou miscreant, to Hades' door. Nay, 'tis robust, not bleep-worthy. Keep it.
Okay. I'm going to knock you out.
I would phrase it thus. I shall smite thee with wrath and fury, thou lumpish knave. Aye, bleep it for civility's sake.
He is but ugly.
I would craft it thus. He hath a visage only a blind mother could cherish. Nay, no need to bleep such saucy wit.
Okay. You're the shiz.
Ah, methinks I'd say thou art the quintessence of swagger and mirth. Nay, no bleep. 'Tis high praise, Jason.
It feels like high praise. Okay, hold on. Where was I? Sir, give me 1 second. I just had a few more. Sorry, I'm a dick.
Ah, I would say, prithee, I am a knave, full of folly and mischief. Bleep it. Nay, it stings but little.
Okay. She's too easy.
I might phrase it thus. She is overly yielding in her affections. A bleep might grace it for decorum's sake.
Okay. All right. That makes sense. Hang on. All right, sir. The next game, is called Coineth This. I'm going to name a situation, and you have to coin a word or a phrase about it.
Oh, Jason, thy game is a merry challenge to mine wits. I relish the chance to unleash new syllables. Proceed, sir.
Okay, excellent. And let's keep those answers short again. A man runs upstairs to get an umbrella, then runneth downstairs without it.
I dub it fluster-stepping, the frantic folly of mislaid purpose.
Okay. When someone uses AI to write a post complaining about AI content.
I name it hypocrisy scripting, a parchment of irony writ with metal's clever hand.
Fair. You do all the housework, but your wife only sees that you left out the ketchup.
Marry, I call it condiment blindness, when effort's grand tapestry is undone by a single unholy stain.
Okay. When you break up with someone and feel instant regret.
I name it love's echo, a heart's swift dagger returning to pierce its own hand.
Okay. And most importantly, when you know you have to pee, but you can't pee.
By my truth, I dub it bladder's destiny, a cruel delay gainst nature's urgent call.
Okay, that's good. Wow, William, thank you so much for joining us. I probably shouldn't have gone out on Mark Zuckerberg there, but let me just ask you, sir, wouldst thou rather die again or come back and haunt our podcast one more time?
Ah, Jason, thou dost offer me a choice most curious. To die again I think not. 'Tis an experience I doth require no encore. Yet to haunt thy podcast, to spin tales, coin words, and spar wit in thy merry games, I would gladly tread this strange stage again. Summon me when thou wilt, my friend.
Okay.
For the play goes ever on.
One more option, though, sir. You can come back and haunt our podcast again, or read my 600-page incomplete first draft of a manuscript.
Ah, Jason, thou dost tempt me as a siren call on misty waters. A 600-page incomplete draft, thou sayest. 'Tis a mountain standing tall beside thy podcast's pleasant meadow. Yet methinks a writer's draft is sacred, rough-hewn though it be, if thou dost dare read me a morsel, a scene, nay, even the first 20 lines, and I shall haunt thy manuscript, not to scoff, but to bless with constructive ghost's wisdom.
Okay.
Until then, summon me to thy podcast. 'Tis a stage more delight than daunting. The play goes ever on.
It does, and I'm here for feedback. Thank you very much, William. Wow. That was a fantastic conversation. I'm so glad I got to speak to William Shakespeare. You know, he was funny, generous. I feel like just speaking with him, you know, I do feel convinced that he actually wrote all those plays. I see no reason to think why anyone else could, would have been able to do that. He was definitely a unique character. Anyway, if you guys enjoyed that and you want to hear any other conversations with guest ghosts, like and subscribe to the show. That would be terrific. You could do that, or you could just watch the next one. Next week, I think we're going to try and talk to Galileo if he'll take our call. All right. Thanks, everybody. Take care.